My heart raced as I stood in Seattle's rain, Caleb's hand brushing mine during a late-night coding session. His wedding ring gleamed, a silent warning. I'd fled my small town's judgment for this city, hoping to be free. But his touch, electric, forbidden, pulled me into a secret I couldn't escape. Would I risk everything for a man who could never be mine? The rain pelted my skin, each drop sharp as a needle. I'd been in Seattle 3 months, a 22-year-old coder who traded a suffocating small town for a chance to breathe. Back home, my father's voice still echoed. "You're broken, Elias. Fix yourself." I'd hidden who I was, gay, different, behind careful words and averted eyes. Seattle was my reset, a city where no one knew my past. But that night, in the glow of laptop screens, Caleb changed everything. He was 38, a senior developer at the tech startup where I'd landed my first real job. His confidence drew me in, the way he spoke with quiet authority during meetings. We were paired on a project, working late to meet a deadline. The office was silent, except for the hum of computers and the storm outside. I handed him a flash drive, and his fingers grazed mine. The contact lingered, deliberate. My pulse spiked. His wedding ring caught the light, a stark reminder of the life he had. A wife, a daughter, a world I couldn't touch. "Sorry," he muttered, but his eyes held mine, steady and searching. I mumbled something incoherent and turned back to my code, my hands trembling. I told myself it was nothing, a mistake, but the air between us had shifted, charged with something I couldn't name. The next week, we were alone again, debugging lines of code as rain battered the windows. Caleb leaned close, pointing at my screen. His shoulder brushed mine, and I froze, heat rising in my chest. "You're good at this, Elias," he said, his voice low. "Better than most." I managed a nod, my throat tight. He didn't move away. Instead, he asked about me, not my work, but me, where I was from, why I'd come to Seattle. I hesitated, then let the truth spill. My father's anger, my mother's silence, the small-town whispers that drove me away. I didn't say I was gay, but the weight of it hung in my words. Caleb listened, his gaze never wavering. "Sounds like you were running from a cage," he said. I nodded, surprised by how easily he understood. Then he spoke, his voice quieter now. "I know what that's like, feeling trapped." He glanced at his ring, then away. My stomach twisted. Was he saying what I thought? I didn't ask. I couldn't. But when he stood to leave, his hand rested on my shoulder for a moment, warm and steady. It was enough to keep me awake that night, replaying every word, every touch. Days turned into weeks, and our late-night work sessions became routine. We talked more, about code, then life, then dreams. Caleb shared fragments of his world, a marriage that felt like a script, a daughter he adored but rarely saw, a life he'd built but didn't fit. I told him about the letters I'd hidden as a teenager, love notes to a boy who never knew, burned before my father could find them. Each conversation pulled us closer, a dangerous thread tightening around us. One night he drove me home through the rain-slicked streets. In the dim light of his car, he turned to me. "Elias, you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" His voice was raw, unguarded. I swallowed, my heart hammering. "Every day," I admitted. His hand reached for mine, hesitant, then firm. Our fingers intertwined, and for a moment the world stopped. No words, just his thumb tracing slow circles against my skin. Then he pulled away, muttering about his daughter, his responsibilities. I shouldn't, he said, but his eyes said something else. I walked into my apartment, my mind spinning. Caleb was married. He had a life I couldn't disrupt. But his touch lingered, a promise and a warning. I'd spent years hiding, running from who I was. Now in this city, with this man, I felt alive and terrified. What was I willing to risk for this? And what would it cost us both? The rain had stopped, but the air in Seattle felt heavier, pressing against my chest as I navigated the days after Caleb's touch. His hand on mine in that car lingered like a bruise, tender, impossible to ignore. I was 22, new to this city, new to the freedom of being myself, yet here I was, tangled in a secret that could unravel everything. Our late-night work sessions continued, but they weren't just about code anymore. Caleb would linger after we finished, asking questions that cut deeper each time. "What's it like?" he asked one night, his voice low, "to leave everything behind?" I told him about the night I packed a single bag, my father's shouts echoing as I slipped out the door. "It was like shedding a skin I never fit," I said. He nodded, his fingers tapping the desk, restless. "I've never had the guts for that," he admitted. His wedding ring glinted, a silent tether to the life he couldn't leave. The tension between us grew, a current pulling us closer. One evening, as we debugged a stubborn error, his knee brushed mine under the table. I froze, my pulse racing. He didn't move away. Instead, he leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. "Elias, you make it hard to pretend." My breath caught. I wanted to ask what he meant, but fear stopped me. Fear of what this was, of what it could cost. We started meeting outside work, careful to avoid prying eyes. A dive bar on the edge of town, a shadowed booth where no one from the office would see us. There, Caleb spoke freely, about his daughter's laugh, his wife's distance, the life he'd built to please everyone but himself. I shared my own scars, the pastor's sermons back home, calling people like me an abomination, the classmates who'd taunted me for being too soft. Each confession felt like a step towards something inevitable, dangerous. One night, after too many drinks, he drove me to a quiet overlook. The city sparkled below, but all I saw was him. "I've never done this," he said, his voice rough. "Not with anyone." Before I could respond, he kissed me, hesitant, then urgent. My hands found his shoulders, anchoring me as the world tilted. It was my first real kiss, raw and unpracticed, but it felt like freedom. When he pulled back, his eyes were wide, almost afraid. "We can't tell anyone," he said. I nodded, my heart pounding with equal parts thrill and dread. But secrets have a way of slipping. At work, I caught glances. Lisa, a project manager, watching us too closely. A coworker's raised eyebrow when Caleb lingered by my desk. My stomach churned. Back home, I'd learned to hide, to blend in. Here I thought I was safe. But Caleb's life, his wife, his daughter, made every moment a risk. "We're careful," he assured me one night, his hand squeezing mine. But his voice shook, and I wondered who he was trying to convince. The weight of Caleb's kiss lingered, a secret that burned hotter with every stolen moment. I was 22, new to Seattle's promise of freedom, but the thrill of us was laced with fear. His wedding ring was a constant reminder. He belonged to someone else, a life I could never touch. Yet each time he leaned close, whispering my name, I let myself believe this could be real. Our meetings grew reckless. A quick touch in the parking lot, a late-night drive to nowhere, his hand finding mine in the dark. Caleb's words were a lifeline. You make me feel alive, Elias. I clung to them, ignoring the dread pooling in my gut. I'd spent years hiding who I was, gay, unwanted, in a small town where love like mine was a sin. Now, in this city, I was falling for a man who couldn't choose me. The first crack came at a company event. Music pulsed, colleagues laughed, and Caleb stood across the room, his arm around his wife. She smiled, oblivious, as he played the perfect husband. My chest tightened, the air too thick to breathe. I'd seen them together before, but this was different. His ease, his laughter, like our nights meant nothing. I slipped outside, the cold biting my skin, and dialed his number. "We need to talk," I said, my voice sharp. He met me later, in a dimly lit bar we'd made our own. "What's wrong?" he asked, his tone too casual. I set my drink down, hands shaking. "I saw you with her, Caleb. You looked happy." His jaw tightened. "It's not like that, you know I'm stuck." I leaned forward, voice low. "You said you loved me. Was that a lie?" He looked away, silent. "I do," he finally said. But the words felt hollow. "But my daughter, my life, I can't just walk away." My heart sank. I wanted to scream, to demand he choose, but his eyes begged for time I wasn't sure I could give. The next day, the office buzzed. Lisa, the project manager, cornered me by the coffee machine. "You and Caleb are close, huh?" Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharp. I forced a laugh, my pulse racing. "Just co-workers." She raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. The whispers grew louder, co-workers glancing my way, conversation stopping when I passed. Someone had seen us, maybe in his car, maybe at the bar. The secret we'd guarded was fraying. I called my mother that night, desperate for an anchor. "I'm trying to be myself," I said, my voice breaking. Her response was cold. "You're choosing a path we can't accept." The line went dead, and so did a piece of me. Caleb's silence was worse. He avoided me at work, his texts short and distant. When I confronted him, his words cut deep. "This was a mistake, Elias. I can't do this." My throat burned. I'd risked everything, my job, my heart, my fragile new life, for a man who wouldn't fight for me. Alone in my apartment, I stared at my phone, Caleb's last message. "I'm sorry," glowing in the dark. I'd escaped one cage only to build another, and now it was breaking apart. Caleb's words, "This was a mistake," echoed in my head, a wound that wouldn't close. I was 22, alone in Seattle, my heart shattered by a man who chose his old life over me. The office had become a minefield. Whispers followed me, eyes tracked my every move. Someone had seen us, and the secret I'd guarded so fiercely was now a rumor, staining my new start in this city. I kept my head down, coating through the haze of hurt. Lisa's knowing glances stung, but worse was Caleb's absence. He avoided me, his desk empty during late-night shifts we once shared. My phone stayed silent, his apology, "I'm sorry," the last thing he'd sent. I'd risked everything for him, and now I was exposed, my truth laid bare for judgment. The weight of it crushed me, reminding me of the small town I'd fled, where being gay meant being invisible. One morning I escaped to a cafe, seeking refuge in the hum of strangers. The barista, Sam, noticed my silence. "Rough day?" he asked, sliding a coffee across the counter. His voice was warm, his ease disarming. I shrugged, but he pressed gently, offering a flyer for a local LGBTQ meetup. "You don't have to go through it alone," he said. I took the flyer, unsure but clinging to the flicker of hope in his words. That night I called my mother again, desperate for a tether to the family I'd left. "I'm still your son," I pleaded. Her voice was flat. Not like this. The rejection hit like a fist, final and unyielding. My father's silence on the other end was louder than her words. I hung up, my chest tight, the ache of being unwanted as sharp as ever. I'd come to Seattle to be free, but freedom felt like falling without a net. The rumors at work grew louder. A coworker muttered "freak" under their breath as I passed, and my stomach churned. I wanted to disappear, to shrink back into the shadow I'd been back home. But Sam's flyer burned a hole in my pocket. I went to the meetup. A small room filled with voices like mine, people who'd faced rejection, fought shame, and survived. A man named Javier shared his story of losing family but finding community. "You're enough," he said, looking at me. For the first time, I believed it. I started attending regularly, each meeting chipping away at my fear. Sam became a friend, his humor a lifeline. "You're stronger than you think," he told me one night over coffee. I wasn't sure, but I wanted to be. Caleb's betrayal still stung, but I stopped checking my phone for his name. I focused on my code, my new friends, the slow work of rebuilding myself. Meanwhile, Caleb's world was unraveling. I heard whispers of arguments with his wife, her suspicions sparked by the same rumors that haunted me. He looked drained in meetings, his confidence gone. I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow ache. He'd chosen safety, but it was slipping away. I wanted to hate him, but all I felt was grief. For him, for us, for the life we might have had. The rumors at work had faded, but their scars lingered. I was 22, still raw from Caleb's betrayal and my family's rejection. Yet Seattle was starting to feel like home. The LGBTQ meetups had given me a lifeline. People like Javier and Sam who saw me, not the whispers or the shame. I was learning to stand taller, to carry my truth without flinching. But the ache of what I'd lost with Caleb hadn't fully healed. I threw myself into coding, letting the logic of it anchor me. My colleagues' stares softened, some even offering hesitant smiles. Lisa, the project manager who'd first noticed me and Caleb, pulled me aside one day. "You're doing good work, Elias," she said, her tone kind but careful. "Don't let the noise get to you." I nodded, grateful but guarded. The office wasn't safe yet, but it was bearable. Sam became my constant. Over coffee, he shared his own story. Kicked out at 17. Rebuilding through sheer stubbornness. "You don't need their approval to be you," he said, his voice steady. He invited me to a Pride event, my first. The streets were alive with color, voices, people unapologetically themselves. I stood among them, heart pounding, not hiding for the first time in my life. A stranger handed me a rainbow pin, and I wore it, feeling its weight like a promise. I wasn't alone anymore. Caleb's life, meanwhile, was crumbling. Word spread that his wife had left, taking their daughter. The rumors that exposed me had reached her, unraveling the facade he'd built. I saw him once outside a coffee shop, his shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. He started to speak, but I shook my head. "You made your choice," I said, my voice calm but firm. I walked away, my chest tight, but lighter than it had been in months. He'd lied to himself, to me, and now he was paying the price. Not out of cruelty, but because truth always finds a way. I called my mother one last time, hoping for a crack in her resolve. "I'm happy," I told her, meaning it. "I'm myself." She was silent, then whispered, "I need time." It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. It was a start. I hung up, knowing I didn't need her to define me anymore. At the next meetup, I shared my story, my small-town fear, Caleb's betrayal, the family I'd lost. The room listened, their nods a quiet strength. "You're here," Javier said, clapping my shoulder. "That's what matters." I smiled, the weight of years lifting. I was Elias, gay, unbroken, enough. Seattle's streets felt different now, not cold, but open, full of possibility. I pinned the rainbow to my bag, a small act of defiance. Caleb's choices had cost him, but mine were building something new. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew I'd face it as myself. No longer running, no longer afraid. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. More stories are coming that will move you, inspire you, and challenge the way you see your own journey. Every story matters, and each one brings us closer to who we are meant to become.